Well, Calvin, you know the big game's coming up this weekend. Who you got?
Oh, it's got to be the Sacramento Kings. It's a tough matchup, I know, Clippers, but it's got to be the Kings. Oh, you're talking about the Super Bowl?
Check it out.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome to another episode of the Royal Report with Calvin and Barry. We are ecstatic to announce the Sacramento Kings are back in the playoff race. That's right, 10-11, one game below 500. We got a chance on Saturday to do something special, Calvin.
We certainly do. Don't look now. Here come the Sacramento Kings.
Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button down below, and thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you as always. On today's episode, we'll examine some potential salary cap flexibility that the Sacramento Kings have going into next year. Barry and I will crown our Sacramento Kings of the week, and we'll break down an impressive 3-1 week this past week from the Sacramento Kings. But we begin, as usual, with headlines from around the league. We start today's show with a scoring machine. Bradley Beal continues a red-hot tear to start the season. Not only is he leading the league in points per game overall, but he has now surpassed Michael Jordan, which anytime you do that is an impressive feat in itself. Beal has now started the season with 17 consecutive games of scoring 25 points or more, which breaks the record previously held by MJ since the 1976-77 NBA merger. Barry, when is the streak going to end is the real question.
And that's a great question because I don't see an end in sight. You know, barring injury, setback, or anything like that, I think Bradley Beal is going to finish the season as the league leading scorer and win the scoring title. He's doing an incredible job, and you know, there's not really that much pressure on him because the Wizards aren't expected to do anything this season. So Beal's filling up the stat sheet, and it's fun to watch. I'm really excited to watch him. Almost 35 points a game, and more important than that, number 2, KD, he's over 4 points a game more than KD. So really incredible. Monty, let's try and pull the trigger on a deal for him if we can make that happen. But also, on our next subject, we would like to wish Vlade Divac a happy birthday. I know it's a little belated. February 3rd was his actual birthday. Vlade spent 6 seasons with the Sacramento Kings. Not super stellar numbers or anything like that, but he was a leader. The Kings were a great team during that stretch, and he's very well respected around the organization.
Without a doubt. It was towards the end of his career by the time he got to Sacramento, so he was never going to be a total stat sheet stuffer by any stretch of the imagination. His first year with the Kings was 98-99, averaged 14 points and 10 rebounds, so a double-double. Very likable guy in the league. My first memory of Vlade Divac is unfortunately always going to be that tipped shot that ends up in Robert Horry's hands in the playoffs, but one of the best passing big men of all time. We love him in Sacramento, and we wish him a very happy belated birthday. We'll keep moving with the red-hot Utah Jazz, who just continue to pile up the victories. Since we talked about them last week, they're now winners of 13 out of their last 14 since a January 6th loss to the New York Knicks, which seems kind of incredible at this point. The Jazz are just loaded. They are completely balanced, as we've discussed before. They seem to have their all-star in Donovan Mitchell, a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Rudy Gobert, and a Sixth Man of the Year candidate in Jordan Clarkson. This team has 5 players that shoot 40% or better from 3, and that doesn't include Jordan Clarkson, who shoots 38% from 3. They're incredibly balanced, and they look just really tough right now.
Yeah, they are incredibly good, and as you mentioned, 5 players averaging over 40% from 3, which is incredible. Even more incredible than that is they're not even the best 3-point shooting team in the league, which is just crazy. So that shows kind of the direction the league has gone in the past, 5 to 10 years. It's just mind-boggling. And on that topic, Buddy Hield's made more threes in his first 4 seasons than any player in history. So that just kind of shows that progression. As you mentioned, they do it as a full team effort. It's all about coaching, schematics, game plan. They're number 1 in the league in rebounding, number 3 in points allowed, and 4th in point differential. So real big team involved effort there, but they have the best defensive big in the league, one of the best shooting guards in the league. Shaq and Kobe did it. Shaq and Dwayne Wade did it. We've seen the recipe of success from the dominating big man and shooting guard, and it's just very impressive to watch what's going on.
Best record in the league right now.
Best record in the league. Moving on to our next topic, the Western Conference Rookie of the Month. The award goes to our Sacramento own Tyrese Haliburton. This award is officially for December and January. Tyrese did play 5 games in December, 5 really good games, and the Kings were like 3-2 in those games. So I'm gonna give him 2 awards for this, Calvin. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sign me up for him winning this award for the rest of the season. I don't see, really, James Wiseman is the only other guy I think who has the potential to win it.
And he just got benched.
So, yeah, Tyrese, we've talked about it on so many occasions, and how could we not? He just is playing great for this team. 11 points, 5 assists, and almost 4 rebounds a game, and he's flirting with a 50-40-90 shooting season as a rookie, which is just unheard of. So, just an incredible year for Tyrese.
Yeah, and he's shooting incredible, and we just saw him score a new career high on Wednesday night against the Celtics. Yeah. So
he just keeps getting better.
He just keeps getting better. Yeah.
Well, we're about a quarter of the way through the season, so it's time to discuss the MVP. As of right now, I'm still going on record and saying that Kevin Durant is going to end up winning this award. To think about what he is doing just a year after tearing his Achilles or a year being removed from tearing his Achilles is unreal. He's averaging 30 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 5 assists. The guy is just unstoppable. Close to 45% from 3. I mean, he really is just a lethal scorer. There's no other way around it, and I really do love watching him play. However, if I had to pick who the award would go to today as the quarter season MVP, I'm taking Joel Embiid. This guy is absolutely carrying the 76ers right now, who have the best record in the Eastern Conference. Joel is averaging 28 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. But to me, the stat that really stands out the most for him is they are 15-3 with him in the lineup, 1-4 with him out of the lineup. I don't know what says MVP if that doesn't right there.
Yeah, the MVP discussion has been cloudy for a while now. Is it most valuable player on your team? Is it most valuable player in the league? Do wins matter? All that stuff. If I'm taking pure most valuable player, I'm going to say Bradley Beal. However, if I'm taking the traditional metrics, I'm going to agree with you and go Joel Embiid. Best player on the best team in the East. And they're probably going to be that way at the end of the season. And I think the award's going to go to Joel if he can keep it up and stay healthy. So on this week's show, we're going to put a top play of the week in between every segment. And we'd love if you guys would vote down below in the comments on what's your favorite play of the week. I know I enjoyed watching them all, but we want to hear from you guys, the fans. We want to know what play you guys enjoyed the most. So let us know down below.
We'll be right back.
It was worth the gamble. Buddy for the tie. Haliburton with the putback counted.
Welcome back, everyone. It sure was an exciting past week for the Sacramento Kings, who posted a 3-1 record against a fairly difficult schedule. All games were close, very, very entertaining to watch. De'Aaron Fox, without a doubt, is the headliner from this past week. He has really taken his game to another level over the past couple of weeks for Sacramento. But in these previous 4 games, Fox is averaging nearly 30 points a game. He's increased his three-point shooting to 35% from the field. And over these last 4 games, he's shooting 75% at the foul line, which is a great thing to see, including the fact that he's made his last 13 consecutive in their past 2 games from the foul line. Fox has continued to play great for them. The one game that stood out to me, because all these games were fairly similar. They were close games that were great learning experiences for Sacramento. Really took advantage of being in close games late and figuring out a way to win. But the Toronto game is the one that stands out the most to me, because that is the one game out of all of these that the Kings were up big and let them back into the game. It seemed like a real playoff type atmosphere in the second half of that game. The Kings were up 10 at halftime. They were up 13 after 3 quarters. And then they got outscored in the fourth, 33-22. Toronto really turned up their defensive pressure and intensity, and it bothered Sacramento. You could just tell. They really were playing into Toronto's hands by taking contested threes without moving the ball very much, and they slowly allowed Toronto to get back in that game. Luckily, Tyrese hits a big 3 late to really seal the deal, and the Kings escape from that game. But to me, this game really said a lot, because, like I said, it felt like a playoff atmosphere in that game, and that's what the Kings are going to have to get used to if they want to take that next step and not only make the playoffs, but win in the playoffs. All the games are going to be like that late, and they can't let a team that is maybe a little handsy defensively just completely throw them off of their offensive game, take them out of away from what they are wanting to do. They clearly got frustrated late in that game with the lack thereof of foul calls and what be it. And I think that was a very, very good learning experience, and they used that to their advantage in all 3 of the very close games after that. Barry, what did you think about the Kings previous week?
I thought it was a great week. I had an awesome time watching Kings basketball this week. I think we should have gone 4-0 if it hadn't been for that botched last play in the Heat game. We would be 4-0 this week and 500 finally, but that's okay. I'm happy with 3-1. As you mentioned in the Raptors game, the Kings got out ahead, and then late they let the Raptors back into the game. I think that's pretty typical of a young team. Especially a young team that's learning how to win, that hasn't done a lot of winning. So they're still trying to kind of figure out how to keep your foot on the gas when you can't see the guy behind you in the rear view. So all learning experiences. All 4 games, I felt like the Kings controlled the pace of the game. I felt like the Kings were in control most of the game. And, I was just really happy to see them. They look like a new team. They look like a totally different team than 2 weeks ago. And I want to refer back to last week's show. The Kings were 2-0, and we had a discussion about whether they turned it around or not. They totally turned it around, and I'm happy to see it. The Pelicans game, De'Aaron Fox lit up the Pelicans for 38 points. I think he had 43 against them in a loss earlier this season. He just continues to own Lonzo Ball from college all the way through the NBA level. When he sees Lonzo on the court, his eyes get big and he goes straight to the basket and goes either over him or around him. So really, really happy to see that. And then I was really surprised by the Celtics game on Wednesday night. Obviously a tough game. The Celtics are a good team. They're a deep team. And the Sacramento Kings were able to stick with them the entire game and pull it out at the end. The third quarter has been tough for the Kings this year. They had to weather a small storm against the Celtics. But if they can get out of that third quarter without a huge deficit, the Kings are pretty automatic in the fourth. So really happy to see that. As I mentioned earlier, Tyrese Haliburton, career high, 21 points in the win. So very excited to see that. I have a feeling we might see a few more of those this season. But great week for Sacramento Kings basketball. Let's take a look at the next top play, and we'll see you soon.
Pick back in 2019. Here's Sky. Misses that one. Right side. Bangs it down with that big right paw.
Welcome back to the Royal Report. It's time for Barry and I to take an inside look into the mind of Monte McNair. The trade deadline is approaching quickly, coming up next month. And Barry and I are going to discuss some potential moves that Monte could be looking to make for Sacramento. I know there are only a couple players really that I would, and I've said this before on this show, that I would think about moving. I really think that Sacramento is onto something here with this group of players. I feel like they're developing pretty well together as a team. It's very clear to me that Nemanja Bjelica is not part of that plan. I can't even remember the last time he was on the court for Sacramento. So he's definitely a guy that I would expect Monty to move. And then the other guy would be Corey Joseph. I think that he, although he has played very, very well for Sacramento, it does help alleviate a little bit of cap room for the Kings if they get his money off their books. So those are really the only two guys that I wouldn't be shocked by seeing them traded. Everybody else, I expect to see really stay put.
Yeah, the trade deadline's coming up March 25th. We're about a month and a half away or so. I think Monty has got a ton of different questions to answer. And, you know, we can't read his mind. We can try our best to put ourselves in his position. But ultimately, he's going to be the one doing the calculations, talking to his advisors, and making the final decisions. A few questions that pop into my mind if I'm Monty and things that are going to keep me up at night. Number one, what are we doing with Buddy Hield? Is he part of this team? Can he step it up on defense? Is he consistent enough on the shooting end? What is his role with this team going to be moving forward? He's just on his first year of a brand new 4-year contract extension. 3 years left, making $20 million a year each season. So that is a big decision for him to make. And kind of related or tied into that decision is, what is the plan for Tyrese Haliburton? Is he the future shooting guard of the Sacramento Kings? Or even perhaps the future point guard of the Sacramento Kings? Who knows? I feel that Tyrese has shown enough already to prove that he belongs in this league and that he is going to continue to grow and become a better player. So I think that it really comes down to whether Monty thinks that De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese can gel and play together. And then second off, whether Tyrese or Tyrese or Buddy Hield are better at the 2 guard for the Kings for the future. So that's a very important decision I think he needs to make, and that could impact trades coming up in the next month and a half. And the second decision for me is, what's happening with Richaun Holmes? Is he going to be the future of this team at the center position? He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. Are we going to re-sign him? Or should we try and move him now for some assets or maybe upgrade the position? So 2 big moves to make. As you had mentioned, Bjelica is probably going to be moved. I know Jason Anderson in the Sacramento Bee wrote an article about Bjelica being on ice, not wanting to have an injury problem. I think the last game he played was January 5th. Then he took a game off due to personal reasons, but apparently the personal reasons was he had issues with playing time. So the Sacramento Kings have quietly been shopping him. Not sure exactly where he would end up, but one place that I would recommend would probably be the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they're 28th in the league in 3-point percentage. And I think they would benefit having a stretch 4 after the loss of Gallinari. So I would be interested in maybe Nemanja Bjelica for Justin Jackson swap. Maybe bring Justin Jackson back to the Kings and he could back up Barnes and bring a little bit more defense to this squad. What do you think, Cal?
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I was just going to ask you what you're looking to get in return here if the Kings are to make a move. I wrote down a handful of players that I would like the Kings to target if they are going to make a trade. One of them, Aaron Nesmith from Boston, a guy who I liked in the draft process. And I really think all these guys are going to be sort of a backup wing player, backup 3 for Harris and Barnes. I think that's the one area, if I was looking at the roster, that they could make a real improvement on without messing with a lot of the team chemistry. So Aaron Nesmith from Boston, Matisse Thybulle from Philadelphia, who we've talked about a lot, Pat Connaughton from Milwaukee Bucks, and Dorian Finney-Smith from the Dallas Mavericks. All are guys who are solid defenders, can guard multiple positions, play the 3 or the 4, a lot like Harrison can. They're good 3-point shooters. I think all of those guys would be good additions coming off the bench for this team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, the Kings have a bunch of second-round picks, and they finally have their first-round pick unprotected, and there's only half of the teams in the league have access to their first round pick this next year. So that could be available in a trade too, who knows? But we're moving on to the next section, so check out another top play and we'll be right back.
12 points for the Kings. He is completely breaking his team down by himself.
More big news from the NBA. There will be an All-Star game this season. After a lot of debate, the NBA has decided to go forth with a game in Atlanta, Georgia on March 7th during the week hiatus for NBA players. Kevin Durant and LeBron James, as no surprise to anyone, are the current leading vote getters after the polls have officially opened for All-Star voting. De'Aaron Fox is not currently in the top 10 guards from the Western Conference. We have got to do something about that as Sacramento Kings fans, even though it sounds like De'Aaron doesn't want to play in the game. But I kind of have to agree with him. I think that this whole idea of having an All-Star game right now with everything going on, I understand the reason and the motives. The NBA needs to make up some lost revenue in some places, and this will certainly help a little bit. It does kind of give fans a false sense of normalcy that there's an All-Star game being played, but when I think about the All-Star game, I don't know about you, Barry, but this game is 100% about the fans. And if there aren't going to be any fans in the building, I just don't understand why we're having an All-Star game. The whole weekend is a huge, huge deal for NBA fans to get close to NBA players, watch, quote, the greatest pickup game in the world. And if you're a player, I couldn't agree more with De'Aaron. There's no motivation for me to play in this game. I think that the players probably draw more on energy from the crowd in this game than in any other regular season game that's played all year long. It just doesn't make much sense to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I haven't been to All-Star Weekend. I really wanted to go. Hopefully it's on my bucket list, so one of these days. But you're right, it's all about the fans. And where are the fans going to be? I know that usually at an All-Star game, the first row or two is celebrities and other players in the league. So maybe other players will be allowed. I don't know. It's going to look weird. Are there going to be cardboard cutouts in the stands for All-Star Weekend? Who knows? Anyways, I just want to focus on getting out there and vote. Let's rock the vote, as P. Diddy said. Let's get out there, vote, vote, vote. You don't even need an ID. You don't have to go to a polling place. You don't even need a driver's license. Just go to NBA.com. You can vote once per day. Or on Twitter, if you have a Twitter account, hashtag NBA All-Star and the name of the player. You can vote up to 10 times per day on Twitter, and voting closes February 16th. Let's work together, Kings fans. Let's get De'Aaron in the All-Star game. He deserves it. Even if he doesn't want to go, let's send him there anyways. De'Aaron, we love you. You are all our All-Star, and it starts with this. So let's get you there. And we'll be right back.
Point first half. The Heat up by one. That's Haliburton. Oh my, he nailed it. So the Heat do not get to take the lead into the halftime.
The question every Kings fan has been asking themselves for the past 10 plus years. Will they make the playoffs? Calvin, I know we talked about this a few shows ago, but I'm going to reiterate it here. The Sacramento Kings are making the playoffs this year. What do you think?
I'm more optimistic about their chances of making the playoffs than the last time the question was asked on this show. That is 100% true. It's just so tough, though. I totally expect the Kings to be in the play-in tournament this year. There's still some questions on how things are going to shake out with teams like Golden State and Houston, who's on a very, very hot streak right now.
And the Mavericks.
The Mavericks, and even the Pelicans. You know, who knows how they're going to play the rest of the year. Zion has been great. So it's going to be a tough battle to end up in those final 9 and 10 slots. But I do think the Kings have certainly as good a shot as any of those teams at making that. The question is, are they going to find their way into the real playoff tournament 1 through 8? They certainly can. I mean, this team they're good enough, without a doubt. And if De'Aaron Fox continues to play even somewhat like he's played for the last 8 games or so, they have a fantastic chance of breaking through and making the playoffs this year. But it's going to be very interesting, and the whole play-in tournament really creates. I'm not a big fan of the play-in tournament, but it creates an added sense of excitement for sure for basketball fans in general. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the tournament. More basketball, more chances for the Kings to make the playoffs. Yes, I think they'll make it. Obviously, depends on what happens here coming up with the trade deadline. You know, Monty's got a lot of decisions to make. And the biggest one is, are we going to compete this year, or are we going to give up and go for a draft pick? I hope he stays on course and stays competitive and decides to compete. Maybe he'll make a couple moves to help bolster the roster, you know, to finish out the season. But I'm going to stay optimistic here, and I'm going to say, yes, the Sacramento Kings are making the playoffs, and let's do it.
Better question, I think, is who would you rather see? Let's assume the Kings get into the first round. They're going to be either the 7 or 8 seed after that play-in tournament. Would you rather play the Clippers or the Lakers in the first round?
Clippers.
Really? Yes. I would rather play the Lakers. I think the Clippers are the worst matchup for Sacramento of any team in the league.
Clippers don't play in the playoffs.
That's a good point. Playoff P, right?
Haliburton cross court to Barnes. Nice rip move on the baseline for the reverse.
All right, new topic on this week's show. Shout out to all my Checkers players out there.
For Christ's sake, make a move and stick with it, would you?
King me.
This topic is called King Me, where Calvin and I choose our King Player of the Week. So Calvin, who are you kinging this week?
Well, I appreciate you letting me go first because I feel like the answer this week is fairly obvious. We could probably examine and break down a guy who's had a very, very positive impact for the Kings and not named De'Aaron Fox. I'm not going to do that though. De'Aaron, in his last 4 games, 29.5 points per game, 35% from the free throw line and 75% at the foul line, like I already said earlier in the show. He's just balling. I mean, he's absolutely dominating. He's playing well late in games. He's hit his last 13 free throws in a row, which was pretty much the only thing he wasn't doing right for the Kings this year. So if he fixes that problem, I mean, we might as well talk about De'Aaron Fox for MVP, let alone King of the Week. Who you got, Barry?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you have De'Aaron Fox on this one. Kind of like the MVP category, there's some murkiness to this. But I'm gonna go with Harrison Barnes. I think Harrison Barnes, not only this week, but this whole season has been the most consistent player on the Sacramento Kings. He's taken a much bigger role on the team this year. And it seems like whenever the Kings absolutely need a bucket, HB is there to deliver. Over the last 4 games, Harrison Barnes, 26 points, 11 points, 24 points, and 24 points. Can you guess which game we lost? That's right.
11 points.
The 11-point game. So HB's impact on the Kings cannot be overstated. De'Aaron Fox, as you mentioned, amazing player. Maybe they can both share the award this week. Who knows?
Gotta say, I'm kind of surprised you didn't pick Tyrese Haliburton, but Harrison Barnes, good choice too.
Tyrese for next week.
The fact, Katie, that after that loss in Miami, as he kicks it out to Bagley in the corner, who makes a slick move behind the back and finishes.
It's never too early to think about next season, especially for Sacramento Kings fans, right? In this category, we're going to be looking at the salary cap table coming up for the Sacramento Kings next year because the Kings have a pretty big number posted. They could potentially have $44 million available in cap space going into next season. There are a lot of big questions that the Kings are going to have to answer. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox was the big question from last offseason. We know the answer to that one as they extended him. Richaun Holmes, like you mentioned before, Barry, what are the Kings going to do with him? I personally think they should re-sign him, even if it's going to take $70 to $80 million over the next 4 or 5 years to do so. I think he is very, very valuable to this team and would make a lot of sense for Monty to extend him. But I'm kind of just going to throw this to you because this is one of your areas of expertise, really breaking down this stuff. And, I just think there are a few big questions out there for the Kings. We don't know, obviously, what the overall salary cap is going to be for next season, which is a huge part of the equation. But where do you see this going with Richaun Holmes and with the rest of the roster?
Well, I think there's a couple big questions to answer to start off. And the first one is what's going to happen with Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph is due $12 million next season. I know it's only partially guaranteed. So we'll see if they choose to guarantee that or not, or if he's moved this year before the trade deadline. I know Monty had emphasized at the start of this season that he's prioritizing cap space and flexibility. However, I don't really see any big name free agents this offseason for the Kings to chase. So is he going to try and preserve that into next offseason, or is he going to swing for the fences, as they may say, this season and try and gamble on a few players and hopefully they'll work out? Other things to mention, De'Aaron Fox starts the first year of his 5-year max contract next season. So his contract, or his salary cap hit, is going to go up by almost or over $20 million next year. So big impact there. Two other notables, Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes, both on big contracts signed back with Vlade Divac. However, on a positive note, both of those contracts were front-loaded contracts. So as the time moves on every year, those contracts drop by $2-3 million a year. And one of the best moves I'd say that Vlade made. And then my third thing to really worry about is what's going to happen with Marvin Bagley. Bagley's making over $10 million next year. I know they already guaranteed it. But when you're in the last year of a contract, especially a rookie scale contract, that's when you start to get into the contract discussions, whether he's going to be a piece for the future or if we should move this guy for a veteran or maybe a younger piece and kind of start the process over again. So all big questions that need to be answered this offseason. But to get back to your main question about Richaun Holmes, I think Richaun is probably going to command in the 12 to 15 million a year range. I think there's going to be plenty of suitors out there, especially considering no other really big major free agents this offseason to spend money on. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, not a lot of teams have first round picks this year also. So they're going to be looking to supplement their teams in free agency versus the draft. We don't know what the salary cap is going to be like. TV revenue is very important in that calculation. And viewers have been up this season. League Pass subscriptions have been up this season. And I think the league is finally finding a way to monetize online streaming of the games. So I don't see the salary cap going down a ton next season, especially with the vaccine and them hoping to have fans back in attendance next season. So bottom line, Monty's got a lot of decisions to make. It's good to have flexibility. I think he'll probably end up keeping that for another year or so and rocking with these young guys, but only time will tell.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to ask you, do you think that this new front office that has been built over the past year is enough in itself to attract, I won't say the biggest free agents on the market, but traditionally Sacramento has not been a desirable place for free agents to go. We talked a lot about how this new front office was a really, really positive thing for the Sacramento Kings as an organization. Do you think that alone is going to have enough of an impact to get some guys in free agents?
I think it will. I think they brought in guys from other organizations, Atlanta, Oklahoma City, Houston, that have connections with other players, and I think they're pretty well known around the league. So I think we have just having a solid structure in place in the front office and not guys constantly moving, and everybody seems to be on the same page. You don't really hear a lot of rumors coming out. It's kind of a really tight ship. So I think that's a good impact. But the number one thing for me, if the Kings want to start attracting big name free agents, is they got to start winning ball games. Simple as that. We saw the Clippers do it a few years ago. just making that 8th seed or the 7th seed or being competitive the entire team, once players see that and they see a culture start to build and establish, guys want to go there. So number one priority, win some games.
Just win, baby.
Just win, baby.
Led by as many as 10 in the second half. Biggest lead for Sacramento is 5. Fox will put them up now by 5.
Out here dancing right now.
Got it.
All right, we got another new category to this week's show. This one is called Scenarios. Calvin and I pose different coaching or in-game scenarios to each other, and we answer them. So, Calvin, I'm gonna let you start off. Go for it.
All right, get your whistles ready and your clipboard set as we put our head coaching caps on here. My question to you, Barry, is which 5 players on the Kings roster are you going with in the 4th quarter of a close game?
Close game. I gotta have Buddy out there. Gotta have Haliburton. I think Harrison Barnes deserves to be out there. Rashawn Holmes. And that leaves me with one more open spot. That's gonna depend on who I'm playing. If I need to go big, it's gonna be Bagley. If I'm going small, defensive oriented, I'm gonna put Corey Joseph out there. So, Calvin, game on the line. You need 2 free throws. Who's shooting them for you?
That's a tough one. The Kings, I think, are in a pretty good situation, though. They've got a number of players who are reasonably good, if not well above average free throw shooters. So you could probably pick a number of players here. I'm going to go with Rashawn Holmes, though. He has been the model of consistency for Sacramento all year long in terms of field goal percentage and free throw percentage. He shot over 80% at the foul line all year long. And why not? What other team is going to have their center on the free throw line with the game on the line, right? Instead of a guard.
That's true. It's very true.
Are you willing to put Tyrese Haliburton in the starting lineup yet?
Man, that's tough. I love Haliburton. I saw he's wearing that new Reese's Pieces sweater. Shout out to the guys at King's Herald. That thing is dope. Might have to order one. Anyways, I don't think it's time yet for him to be in the starting lineup. I think that he probably deserves to be a starter in this league on plenty of teams, but I like the way the Kings are going right now, and we need him coming off the bench. So, no, as of right now, Tyrese is our 6th man still. All right, Calvin. So, if you have to share a locker with any current player on the Sacramento Kings, who is it going to be?
Share a locker? Man, I'm probably going to have to say Harrison Barnes. Harrison is, he's a guy who I think my game is kind of similar to, not in terms of me being as good as him, but we both have a similar style, a 3-and-D type player. Guy who's pretty quiet, goes about his business, but he's always there. And I think that having a guy, he's the only guy on the roster who has a championship ring. So he would have a lot of valuable advice and experience that he could pass on to me. And I think that would be a good guy to share a locker with.
And you'd have extra room in the locker because he doesn't have a razor or shaving cream in
there you
so.
go. Absolutely. Yeah, it would work great. All right, if you are going to collab with Marvin Bagley on a track,
Ooh.
what's the name of your rap song gonna be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I'm gonna have to go with Making It, because Marvin is in the process of making it as an NBA player, and the Sacramento Kings are making it to the playoffs this year. So the title of the song's gotta be Making It.
I like that.
And I'd probably use a beat similar to our intro. I think Marvin could flow on that pretty good. So, all right, what player on the Sacramento Kings? I know there could be more than one, but I'm asking you, which player on the Sacramento Kings will be a future head coach in the NBA?
Ooh, wow. Man, I would probably have to say Tyrese Haliburton. He clearly has a mental aptitude for the game. You can totally tell that the way he reads offenses when he's on defense. Guys who are point guards are traditionally, the people like quarterbacks who you think know the most about how the game works. But he's calm, cool, collected. He has the right demeanor to be a head coach. I would probably have to say Tyrese. I like that question. That's all the time we got for scenarios. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show.
Specifically in that fourth quarter. And Haliburton with the throwdown.
That's our show for this week. Thank you as always for watching. Kings have another tough 3-game slate ahead of them. This coming week, they have matchups with the Denver Nuggets, LA Clippers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Luckily, we've had Denver's numbers so far this year. We'll hope to make it 3-0 against them on Saturday. And hopefully they get their first win of the year against a vaunted LA Clippers team.
Yeah, Saturday. Make sure you tune in. We need all the support we can get. We're going for 500. It's been a while. Then on Sunday, we're going to be having a live watch party of the Kings-Clippers game. Make sure you guys all tune in for that. It'll be interesting to see how Joel Embiid reacts after the sprained ankle in the game on Thursday night. I know he came back in the game, but those injuries seem to linger and they seem to affect you more after adrenaline and everything wears off. So maybe we can play the Embiid-less Sixers. Who knows? Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe button. Leave us a comment down below. Let us know how you love the show. And tune in next week for another episode of the Royal Report. Thanks, guys. Go Kings.
Go Kings. Happy Super Bowl weekend.
Go Bucks.